by way of introduction, Peter Broderick, he is responsible for trying to promote this by way of encouraging organ donation registration. So with that introduction, I'll just turn it over to Peter. Peter, how'd you get involved in this? And what can you tell us about something we wouldn't know from just watching it?
Well, my involvement is from a long time ago. My best friend was had kidney cancer, and at that time, Dr. Starzl was in Colorado, and her doctor in the New York area had basically said, "Just go home and die." And she had found out about Dr. Starzl, went to Colorado. I visited her there, and he was, thinking about doing a transplant, but in the end, he went in and cut out 85% of her liver, and which then regenerated, and she's alive today and had a kid and all that. So I met him before he got to Pittsburgh, and he made quite an impression in many ways. So years later, I'd say probably 2018, I got a phone call from someone, and they said, "Well, would you be interested in consulting on the distribution of the film?" And I said, I'd be totally interested in doing that. And then I heard nothing for a year. And then I got another email saying, "Would you be interested in helping with the distribution?" So the University of Pittsburgh had financed the movie, and they're obviously not a distributor, and they needed some help. So my partner and I said that we could advise them in terms of ways to get the movie out more widely. And but being a university that is slow moving and fairly bureaucratic, they couldn't really take the advice. And we wanted to help, but they couldn't really do much with the help. And so in the end, when it became clear that wasn't working any longer, my partner and I said, "Okay, we'll distribute the movie," because there was nothing, the movie was going to have no life if we didn't step up. So we agreed to do that, and we started last year, and then obviously things are more complicated with COVID, but we've made lots of progress with the film, and we're hoping to do a lot of screenings in April, Donate Life Month, and so it's a journey where we meet so many people who want to help and are interested in the film, seen the film in some way, it's connected to their lives or their families. And we feel that the more people who see the movie, hopefully the more organ donation there'll be. So that's our number one goal. And in terms of our plan right now, it's to make support as many screenings around the country. And then eventually it'll be available for educational distribution. And at some point it's going to be on public television. So that's where we are today. The filmmakers were very passionate about the subject. I wasn't involved when they were making the film, but I spoke to the producer today. She's making a new film, a documentary about vaccinations and vaccination wars in this country. But it's a film that I'm really passionate about, and any thoughts or suggestions that any of you have in terms of other people or organizations that you think might be interested in, partnering in some way and supporting the film. And mostly that's in kind partnership. It's not financial partnership, but we're just trying to spread the word as widely as we can among organizations, focusing on that first, and then eventually we'll be going, kind of wider to the general public.
And when I was first talking with Peter, I made sure he was aware of the history between the founding of TRIO by Dr. Starzl and some patients of his back in 1987, and also how we gave him a Lifetime Achievement Award in Pittsburgh at our anniversary meeting. I think it was our 30th anniversary or 35th, one or the other. And I was pleasantly surprised that he was able to join us, and especially since he passed away a number of years later. And so we had a very special time with him, and he was so generous with both his comments and also offering the opportunity for any of the chapters wanted to take a picture of the famous Dr. Starzl with their members. It was really very, very nice. And I just feel very fortunate that we don't do an awards thing every year. And so it was like the first time we did this, and he was an obvious choice. And so there's that connection. And I've also suggested to Peter, if and when they get a connection with PBS and they're going to show it, if there's any way the trio can support what he's doing by offering that testimony, we'd be glad to do it. We did make a unsolicited donation of $1,000. There was no charge for this pre-screening, but I felt TRIO as an organization would do well in helping sponsor what he's doing. And when we reached out there, I was pleasantly surprised to find out how many people said they've seen it at least once, if not more than once. And so, Peter, it's getting out there either before you or since you, I don't know which. And I wish we had more of our chapters here, but we will communicate with them. Something else that we've discussed, Peter, would you like to talk about the opportunities a chapter can have in having their own pre-screening for their community and their chapter?
Right. Right now, we have as if any of you saw it in this past week, it's set up so people can see the film virtually, so they can fit it into their schedules, whatever time kind of works for them. And so obviously, virtual screenings are COVID proof, whereas physical screenings will be coming back someday in the future, I'm sure. So it's set up so that if a chapter was interested in making available to its members, and then if like in this situation, you wanted to have a special event where people could discuss the movie together after having seen it, that's very possible. We did a big panel at the liver meeting recently, and we did a screening at Stanford, and so we've been doing more and more screenings around the country. So, if you're interested, I can send, or Jim can send you my email address, whatever's easiest, and any questions you have. If you'd like to do it, we'd love it if you would do it in April, because we want to see if we can get as many screenings going across the country in that month as possible. There's different ways to do it. Sometimes people do it as a fundraiser, where the way the platform is set up, you didn't see it in this week because we didn't do it that way, but there's a way that people can donate. There's a way that you can charge admission. So it could be a fundraiser where there'd be a ticket, or, it's very, very flexible. And I hope for the people who saw it this week, you saw it was very easy to access and to use. So we'd love it if you were interested in doing that and supporting the movie among your members locally.
After this meeting, we will send out that information, Peter, and with the contact information we have. And I hope that the chapters see this as an opportunity, especially in this hybrid world of meetings where the online stuff is so popular. And I really appreciated the flexibility of having this available for a week so people could fit it in their schedule, because it is an hour and a half long, and we wouldn't be able to have a meeting where we just showed the movie, for example, and still have it just would be too long. So it worked out very well. We have it till today, and Peter, you had offered, I think, to extend it for anybody that missed it. So
yes,
we have another week, was it?
I think it's another few days. I'll check with Rebecca. I'm speaking to her tomorrow morning.
Okay.
But I think it's another couple of days, and I can let you know, Jim, and then you can let people know. But it's still available for anybody who hasn't seen it.
Okay.
And I'll get you the exact dates.
All right, then we'll wait till tomorrow to hear from you before we put that announcement out so that people know it. And right now, I'd just like to open up for discussion for those, and everybody here had their hands up that they had seen it. So by raising your hand, I'll recognize you. add any comments or questions you might have. Steve, what did you think?
This was the second time that I saw the movie.
And by the way, Steve's a liver recipient.
Yeah, and I saw it at a film festival in San Jose, probably, I guess, 3 years or so ago. But what I really enjoyed watching it the second time was the inclusion of Dr. Andreas Sakis in it. And I don't remember from seeing it the first time, but he cited, there's a number of opportunities or places where he's interviewed in it. And Zakis was the person who came up with the cable portal hemitransposition surgery, which saved my life when I had my second liver transplant in 2000.
Wow.
And that was, it was really a treat to see this man.
Very cool.
Peter, if I may ask one other question. Say, for example, our San Francisco chapter decides to get on board with a screening come April. What do you see as the logistics for getting this going? What's the next step?
Well, I mean, we've got the platform there. It's super simple for us to, work with a chapter and say, you tell us the dates you want it. And then if you want to arrange a, kind of a Zoom event or call afterwards, we can, time it so that people see the movie before the event and can talk about it. And then we could add a few more days afterwards for people who have missed it. So it's really just a question of how you share the information about it with your members and let them know about it. And then it's, it's available on any computer that people have, in a very simple way. It was designed, there's a lot of other platforms out there. I'm sure you're familiar with Netflix and a lot of them, but we tried to design it so it was very easy to use and accessible.
As a technical, this was excellent.
What Peter just said, Steve, it was so simple. They provided basically the landing page, and we just put it out there as you saw in the invitation. There was no work on our part. It was very professional looking. So I would say it's as simple as Peter just described for you.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments about what you've seen, or doesn't have to be a question? What did you think of it? Sam, unmute yourself.
Yeah, so first I just wanted to make a comment of what I thought about it. Obviously Dr. Starzl was a pioneer, but there was a thin line between being a pioneer and someone sort of a hero, if you will, going against a lot of things and, not following all the rules and things like that. And I just have a little anecdotal story. So, with this pig heart thing, there was a doctor like 25 years ago who actually did transplant a pig's heart into a human. This happened in India 25 years ago. And he was actually jailed for it, right? He was arrested and jailed for like 40 days. And then while he was in jail, his practice was burned down and all of that, right? So I'm just saying, Dr. Starzl was amazing, but he also, I guess you have to be a rebel to be able to achieve so much. And you have to do, there was no guidelines, right, for him. I mean, it was like an open book. He could do whatever. And so it's great that he was able to do that because it meant advancement, and here we are now. And then the other comment was about the myths, what people believed at the time, what was happening with transplants. They were talking about if you were a murderer, you might be a murderer if you get somebody's organ, or if you're a prostitute, or you might be a prostitute, so it's funny to think about those kind of things. And then you have different sort of myths now, right? So that's another thing. And then last thing, I wanted to ask a question to Peter. Is there a way to like append or wrap a small video or something to introduce the organization
Yes.
around this, the broadcast?
Yeah, we've got that built in. So if you've got a video or stills or other information that you want ahead of time, that can be, introduced to film.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Real quick, let me interrupt. We've just had Patty from, Patty, I forget, what state are you in now? You're not in San Francisco anymore. What state? Patty? Maybe she stepped away. And Kim Marsh just joined us. Thank you, Kim.
I'm on, Jim.
Of our two new board members. Patty, what state are you in now?
I'm in Nevada.
She's in Nevada. So thank you for joining us. We're in the middle of discussing the Burden of Genius movie pre-screening and looking
I've
at
been-
comments. Elizabeth, as a liver recipient out, what, 30 years?
It will be 30 years in August, God willing. Let's start
God willing.
there.
And
you
so
know.
what was your reaction? Because Pittsburgh, that's where you got your transplant.
Well, it was a crazy place. It was a crazy place to be in 1992. And they were actually, you talk about the pig heart transplant. I was just saying to Jim this morning, I remember being in the hospital and hearing a lot of noise outside my window. And when I questioned what the noise was about, I was told that the animal rights activists were out there protesting because they were doing research on pig organs. And I remember that. And I also remember that they were doing a lot of research on immunosuppressants. And when I was first transplanted, I was transplanted and put on FK506, which later became Prograf and tacrolimus. So, it was a crazy place. He was breaking all the barriers. And like Sam said, many of us are here because of the work he did to just break out and not just do what everyone expected. So I thought it was a good representation of him and the craziness of just living that life as a surgeon and as a scientist and just, trying to make good for the patient.
I think Sam touched on it. He had to be a there and he said he could not do what he was doing if he paid attention to people who were against what he was doing.
Right.
And let's face it, in the beginning, there was a 20% success rate.
Right.
So 8 out of 10 people died.
Mhm.
And when he did his whole entourage there at the hospital was against it. Not his team, but the rest of the doctors, they wanted him out of there. I thought the film did a great job. And I'd be curious, and raise your hand if you have something to comment. The thing that really stuck out with it, there was so much in that film. Okay, it was very well done. I really, really, really got a lot out of it. But the thing it still hangs into me was the description of that one gentleman that they lost, that they used 300 pints of blood in trying to save him, right? And I never thought about it, but they described it there as, as they're putting that blood in, it's going away someplace. Well, where's it going? It's coming out all over the floor. And they described 2 to 3 inches of blood that they're standing in as they're doing the operation, trying to save this guy's life for hours on end. That touched me. You don't think about those kind of things. We think about a sterile room and somebody on white, sheets and so forth as they very nicely do a successful transplant. But in the beginning, that was not the norm. And so I actually, and I'm not going to use it because we don't have that much time, but I have 2 pages of notes of things that to discuss or share or talk about because they just struck me so. And since then, Peter, I've had 3 people just today alone that were connected with livers or in another case, xenotransplant, that I've said, hey, you got to see this film. And so I've told them, I said, you only have tonight to see it. And then I want to hear what you thought of it. And so there are some people out there who, one just got a liver transplant 2 years ago, and his wife wrote a book about it, which I reviewed. And they called this afternoon, and we had a great conversation. And I told them about this, and they really didn't know any of the background. And so we're promoting it even beyond what you've offered. And it's just an amazing project you've got underway. Lorinda, is that your hand up? Go ahead.
Yes. So as a liver transplant recipient, I was just in awe. And so one of the things that he said is the space between the social outcast and the genius is very small. And I was just like, absolutely, that hit me, because it's just of what he did, his plot, and making sure that he went with the people that trusted him. And, you know, I've been able to go this last week and go into ICU to 2 different people that have had liver transplants. And so I'm actually got to talk to someone getting ready to have a liver transplant. So I'm just in awe of the whole story in the film. So thank you for sharing that.
Anybody else? Yes, go ahead, Michelle.
It was our second time seeing the film also, and the first time we saw it, I don't remember now who put it on, but Robert Montgomery was on the panel and he had some personal comments about Dr. Starzl. And of course, we know Robert Montgomery from here at Hopkins because he was one of Marty's surgeons with his liver transplant. And I just kept thinking, this is the man, this is the reason why my husband's still here another 12 years, because this man was fearless and wasn't going to take any roadblocks, just barrel through them to, you know, reach his goal. Just so thankful. And I also noted the bit about the blood, because I just remember when Marty came out of surgery, somebody in the hallway complaining about how much blood they had to use for Marty in his surgery. So that's interesting. Obviously not 300, but it's interesting that that was something that came up in the film also. I think it's a very touching. It's hard for me to see it and not cry. I'm sure that a lot of people have that same reaction, but it was very well done. And thank you for allowing us to see it, Peter, because I think we would be interested in our chapter, but thank you for allowing us to see it again.
You're welcome.
I can't imagine being a liver recipient watching that film and realizing that all he went through is why you're alive today. Kim?
Yeah, I have a little personal story that might shed a little light, and goes right along with Dr. Starzl and his personality that was shared so perfectly in the film. But I started dialysis in, I think, March. I was just looking at my notes here, March of 1980, and I was at the University of Colorado. And so I think the film did tell the story that prior to Pittsburgh, Dr. Starzl was in Colorado at the University of Colorado in Denver. And at that time, Dr. Starzl was there, and my dad died about 4 years ago, and we found this big notebook in his office filled with letters and correspondence, because at that time I was a very young teenager, and he and my mom were sort of heading up, trying to get me on the list and get an organ and et cetera, et cetera. So just to give a little taste for kind of the type of person Dr. Starzl was, my mom can now recollect, and she said that they walked through the halls at the University of Colorado with Dr. Starzl, through some of the patient rooms, and very young patients being treated with cyclosporin in the very, very early days for liver transplants. But what I thought was so interesting is I have this letter that Dr. Starzl, I was, I think, 13, and Dr. Starzl had offered a kidney of a 6-month-old or a 1-year-old, very young kidney. So this is kind of, his maverick approach, like trying to help my family out at whatever, even taking a risk like that. I think I was a difficult match, being an O positive and having had a lot of transfusions. So in this correspondence, my dad wrote, dear Dr. Starzl, thank you again for remembering Kim on Saturday night. It's not an easy decision to turn down a precious organ as the one that was presented to us through you. Just to kind of, please continue to keep your eye open for an O positive organ. Thank you so much for your understanding. And then he wrote back and just said, I'll be in Denver only for a few days between now and January 1. And that the new team will, be your new search instrument, and that he had plans to go to Pittsburgh, and here's the University of Pittsburgh address, and please feel free to call me anytime, and just very open and wanting to help. So, it's just a very remote personal connection, but kind of gives you an idea, and as does the film in such a beautiful way, of the kind of person Dr. Starzl was.
They tell me that he remembers every single person's name that he operated on. And I've seen that in practice at some event, I forget what, but he was there. And people in the audience, Dr. Starzl, oh, hi, Joan, how are you? I mean, he so personal. The other thing that struck me in the film, we talk about the shortage of allocated organs and how difficult it is to wait for an organ. The comment was, in 1986, there were fewer patients than organs. Their problem was finding patients. Wow, we've come a long ways. And who knows what the long-range impact's going to be as xenotransplantation really catches on and maybe becomes a relief for those many people that are waiting for their organs. All right, last chance. Anybody else have any other comments you want to add before we move on to our agenda? Yes, Bill, unmute. I'm sorry, you're right. I see it.
Hey,
Go
good
ahead, Bill.
evening. The thing that I found most fascinating too is just how complex Dr. Starzl was. Certainly that's a fine line to run. And obviously his first wife didn't really get him, right? And then he got married a second time to this amazing woman, Joy, who I had the pleasure of meeting. So I never met Dr. Starzl, but I did meet his second wife, Joy. And gosh, what a joy she is, right? So I believe some other of us TRIO members have met her at the Transplant Games at one point or another. Still a big advocate, still out there. Oh, and I did get to sit and have a talk with Dr. Starzl on the campus of the University of Pittsburgh. They have a bronze statue. It's like a Seward Johnson.
I hear he's a good
And that's
listener.
a great picture that I have. I'm sitting opposite him in the opposite pose. And yeah, he is a great listener. So anybody wants to, but just Joy and how she really understood him and encouraged him, and that whole relationship, I think, is very unique and interesting. Jim, you presented Dr. Starzl with the Lifetime Achievement Award at our 25th anniversary in Pittsburgh in 2012.
Oh, no, it wasn't that far ago, was it? Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Time's flying.
TRIO will be celebrating its 39th year this year. And as a side note, Philadelphia chapter, 25 years this year on June 4th, right, Elizabeth? Our charter is June 4th.
I think it's June 4th, yes. I don't have the charter in front of me and I did not memorize it, sorry.
I do, I have it hanging up right here.
Oh, good.
Okay. Last chance, anybody else? If not, it was a great conversation. I'm so glad we all had a chance to view that and had some sharings here. Peter, thank you again for making that possible. And we will communicate to the chapters and hopefully they'll pick up on it. Any last comment, Peter?
Well, I just want to thank you all for inviting me and hearing you talk. It just reinforces my desire to make the film as widely available as possible. So thank you.
Well, I want to say that I'm humbled to be able to carry forward TRIO in a way that can support work like you're doing. Peter said to me just the other day, he gets a lot of comments or interest from people, but the follow through isn't there. And the day we were talking, I forget exactly what I'd asked him and what I was telling him we were doing, et cetera. But he said, Jim, he said, I needed that today. He said, it's been frustrating and your organization is one of the few that really have followed through.
Totally.
And so I really thank you again for doing something that TRIO is proud to be a supporter of and to be able to share like this. We will get it out to the chapters, both as a recording from here and also that extended viewing option. And hopefully chapters will pick up on that. So Peter, any way we can help you, especially if you get that PBS connection going, count TRIO in if we can help you in any way, okay? Obviously, you had personal stories here that would support any way you want to use us.
Great. Well, thank you all very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.